For 8 years, the Alpha King's son touched his ear and howled in silence. Every healer said the same thing: cursed by the moon goddess, nothing can be done. His father slaughtered entire packs, ransacked ancient covens, dragged shamans across 3 kingdoms to look again. They all bowed low and whispered the same answer: irreversible, accept it. Then a rejected Omega with no pack and no name noticed something glinting in the shadows of that child's ear, and what she pulled out will shatter everything you thought you knew about power, curses, and the moon goddess herself. Before we continue, mark this pack with your subscription, leave your howl in the comments, and tell me which territory you're watching from. I believe the moon goddess led you to this story tonight for a reason. Zulfikar Khan was not a king by birthright. He was a conqueror who had carved his throne from the corpses of 12 alpha packs. The northern territories bowed to him not out of loyalty, but out of terror. When he walked, the ground seemed to tremble beneath his boots. When he spoke, even his own warriors flinched. His wolf was massive, black as midnight, larger than any natural wolf should be. The other packs called him the Red Khan because he never took prisoners, never showed mercy, never left survivors to tell tales of rebellion. The Crimson Fortress rose from the cliffs like a monument to brutality. Built from red stone and dark timber, it overlooked the howling waste, a frozen wasteland where rogues hunted and the weak died screaming. From the outside, the fortress was magnificent. Towers that scraped the sky, walls thick enough to withstand siege engines, gates forged from iron blessed by blood rituals. But inside, the beauty twisted into something darker. Cold corridors stretched endlessly, lit by torches that cast dancing shadows on tapestries depicting Zulfikar's victories. The scent of wolf and smoke and something else hung in the air. Desperation, fear, loss. The silence inside was not peaceful. It was predatory, heavy, like the stillness before a wolf strikes. Servants moved through the hallways with their heads lowered, speaking in whispers because the Alpha King had made it clear. Noise was weakness, laughter was defiance. Music was a memory this fortress had forgotten. Guards stood at attention, with their eyes fixed straight ahead. Omegas scrubbed floors without making a sound. Even the wind seemed afraid to howl too loudly against the stone walls. And somewhere in that suffocating silence, a father was drowning. For 8 years, since the night his son Arman was born, Zulfikar had torn across the werewolf kingdoms seeking healers. He dragged shamans from the Shadow Coven through snowdrifts, threatening them at claw point to examine his son one more time. He burned rare herbs worth more than most packs earned in a decade, trying every ritual, every potion, every prayer the mystics offered. He flew to the eastern peaks, where ancient witches lived in caves, begging them to look at the boy. He crossed into forbidden territories, where rogue healers practiced dark magic, willing to pay any price for answers. Every specialist said the same thing. The moon goddess has cursed your bloodline, Alpha. Your son will never hear, never shift, never rule. There is nothing we can do. You need to accept this. Accept it. The words tasted like ash in his mouth. How could he accept that his boy would live in silence forever? How could he accept that Arman would never hear his father's voice, never howl with the pack under a full moon, never become the alpha he was born to be? But more than that, how could he accept that this was his fault? That his brutality, his bloodshed, his refusal to show mercy had brought the moon goddess's wrath down on an innocent child? because that was what the healers whispered when they thought he couldn't hear, that Armand's deafness was punishment, that the moon goddess had looked at Zulfikar's hands, stained with the blood of surrendering wolves, and decided to take something precious from him: his heir, his future, his last piece of the woman he had loved. Zainab. Her name was a wound that never healed. She had been his mate, his lunar, the only wolf who had ever made him feel like something more than a weapon. Golden eyes that saw past his scars. A laugh that made the fortress feel less like a tomb. Hands that touched him gently, even when he came home covered in the blood of his enemies. She had believed he could be better, could rule with wisdom instead of fear. She had been wrong, but moon goddess, he had loved her for believing it anyway. She died the night Arman was born. A blood moon birth, the midwives said, both blessed and cursed. The labour had gone on for hours. Too long, too much pain. Zulfikar had paced outside the birthing chamber like a caged animal, listening to her screams, forbidden by tradition from entering. When the screaming stopped, he knew. He knew before the healer opened the door with blood on her hands and sorrow in her eyes. Complication, they called it. Too much silver in her blood. The pup was too strong. He was killing her from the inside, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. Zulfikar had broken through the door, shoved the healers aside, and gathered Zainab into his arms. She was so pale, so cold already. The light in her golden eyes was fading like the last embers of a dying fire. "Promise me," she had whispered through blood on her lips. "Promise me you will love him. Even if he is different. Even if he is not what you hoped. He is ours. He is all we have. Promise me." Zulfikar had promised. What else could he do? He held her hand and felt her pulse weaken, felt her breathing slow, felt her spirit leave her body while he sat there powerless to stop it. Her lips moved after that, trying to say something more, words he would never know. No sound came out, just like their son would be, silent, trapped, unable to speak the things that mattered most. The guilt sat on his chest like a stone he could not lift. If he had chosen a different pack healer, if he had listened when the midwives said blood moon births were dangerous, if he had been less brutal, less violent, less hated by the moon goddess, maybe Zainab would still be here. Maybe Arman would be whole. Maybe his hands could build something instead of only knowing how to destroy. So Zulfikar did the only thing he knew how to do. He spent everything: gold, favors, blood, threats, whatever it took. Millions in pack currency exchanged hands. Ancient debts were called in. Promises were made to wolves he despised. Flights across territories on the backs of wyverns. Hotels in foreign packs that cost more per night than most wolves earned in a month. Private audiences with healers who demanded tributes of blessed silver and moonstone just to look at the boy. Every time, the same answer. Your son's deafness is permanent, Alpha, congenital. Written into his bones by the moon goddess herself. There is nothing we can do. Accept it and teach him to live with silence. But how could he accept it when every doctor's dismissal felt like another failure? When every healer's pity felt like a knife between his ribs? When every moment he looked at Arman, he saw Zainab's eyes in a face that would never hear her name spoken aloud. So Zulfikar kept searching, kept writing blood oaths to anyone who claimed they could help, kept hoping that somewhere, someone had an answer the others had missed. Because if he stopped searching, if he accepted this curse, then he had to face the truth, that his violence had cost him everything. that the moon goddess had taken his mate and crippled his son, and there was no amount of gold or power or conquest that could undo it. Arman was 8 years old, and he had never heard a sound. Not his father's voice, not the howl of wolves under the full moon, not the wind screaming through the mountains or the crackling of fire in the great hall. He lived in a world of silence so complete it might as well have been death. The pack called him the cursed prince, the broken heir, the moon goddess's punishment made flesh. They whispered it when they thought he could not see their lips moving. But Arman had learned to read the shape of cruelty in people's mouths. He was small for his age, too thin. His mother's golden eyes looked too large in his pale face, and his black hair fell across his forehead in a way that made him look younger than he was. He moved through the Crimson Fortress like a ghost, silent not by choice, but by nature. His footsteps made no sound. His breathing was something only he could feel. When he cried, no one heard. When he laughed, no one knew. The world was a pantomime, all movement and expression, but no music, no voices, no connection. The other pack children did not play with him. Their parents had taught them to keep their distance. Curses spread, they said. Bad luck followed the broken. So Arman spent his days alone in the courtyard, building elaborate towers from smooth river stones. He would arrange them for hours, stacking them in perfect balance, creating structures that looked like miniature fortresses. When they fell, he would start again. Patience was easy when you had nothing but silence to fill. He also collected warrior figurines carved from wood and bone. His tutors gave them to him, thinking they would help him understand pack hierarchy, battle formations, the strategies he would need if he ever became alpha. But Arman arranged them differently, not in battle lines, in circles, in families, in patterns where no one was alone. Every few minutes, the same gesture. His right hand would drift to his right ear, press gently against the opening, then pull away. A wince would flicker across his face. Brief, subtle, so habitual that most people did not notice anymore. It was just part of who he was. The deaf boy who touched his ear. The cursed prince who flinched at something no one else could see. His tutors had examined that ear 1,000 times in the early years. They tilted his head toward the light, peered inside with blessed silver instruments, touched the skin around it with oils meant to reveal hidden magic. Nothing. Just an ear. Just flesh. Just the silence the moon goddess had written into him before he was born. Arman had stopped hoping they would find anything. He had stopped hoping for a lot of things. Hope was for children who believed their fathers could fix the world. Arman knew better. He saw the way Zulfikar looked at him, or rather the way his father did not look at him. The way the Alpha King would walk past him in corridors without stopping, without reaching down, without acknowledging that his son existed in any way that mattered. It was not cruelty. Arman understood that somehow. It was something worse. It was grief so deep it had turned into avoidance. Every time Zulfikar looked at his son, he saw Zainab dying, saw his own failures, saw the curse he could not break, and the moon goddess's judgment he could not escape. So he stopped looking, stopped trying, stopped being a father because being a father meant facing the fact that he had failed at the one thing that mattered. Arman had learned not to reach for him anymore, had learned not to run to his father when other wolves were cruel, when the silence became too heavy, when the loneliness felt like it would swallow him whole. Because reaching for Zulfikar only made the distance more obvious, only made the absence more painful. So Arman built his towers and arranged his figurines and touched his ear when the strange pressure inside it became too much to ignore. And he told himself that this was fine. This was normal. This was what it meant to be the cursed son of a king who ruled through fear and had none left to give his own child. But late at night, when the fortress was dark and even the guards had retreated to their posts, Arman would stand at his window and watch the stars. He could not hear the wind, could not hear the wolves howling somewhere in the mountains, could not hear his own heartbeat or breathing or the sound of his hands gripping the stone windowsill. But he could see the stars, and they did not care if he was cursed. They did not care if his father could not look at him. They just burned, distant and cold and indifferent. And somehow that was more comforting than any word anyone had ever tried to sign to him. The late autumn snow came fast that year. It started as a dusting in the morning, and by evening had become a blizzard that swallowed the world in white. The guards stationed at the outer gates of the Crimson Fortress huddled close to their torches, cursing the cold, when one of them saw movement in the storm. A figure, stumbling, falling, crawling forward through snow that was already knee-deep. They almost left her there. Wolves without pack scent were usually rogues, criminals, exiles who had been cast out for crimes too dark to forgive. Letting them freeze was a mercy compared to what the Alpha King would do if they brought trouble inside his walls. But one of the guards, younger than the others, saw something that made him hesitate. She wore a healer's pouch at her belt. Old leather, worn smooth, the kind passed down through generations. And her hands, though blue with cold, clutched a bundle of oilcloth protecting herbs from the snow. Healers were rare. Healers with that kind of knowledge were rarer. The guard made a decision that would change everything. He opened the gate. They carried her inside. She was barely conscious, lips blue, skin like ice, her copper hair frozen in stiff strands around her face. The guards brought her to the Omega quarters, a part of the fortress where the lowest-ranked wolves lived. Narrow rooms, thin blankets, cold stone floors. But it was warm compared to the storm outside, and the Omegas knew how to nurse someone back from the edge of freezing. When she woke hours later, Mahira Razaki did not scream or cry or thank them. She opened her green eyes, looked around the small room, assessed where she was and who surrounded her, and made a decision in the span of a single breath. She would survive this, whatever this place was, whoever these wolves were. She would survive because that was what she had been doing for the last 10 years. Surviving when she should have died. Living when everyone she loved was gone. She sat up slowly, her body screaming in protest. Every muscle ached from the cold. Her fingers were numb. Her feet felt like stones. But she was alive. And alive meant she still had a chance to rest, a chance to heal, a chance to figure out her next move. The head Omega, a stern woman named Nazreen, with grey streaking her dark hair and eyes that had seen too much, stood in the doorway watching her. "You are lucky the guards found you, Segun," Nazreen said, her voice flat and without warmth. "Most wolves freeze in storms like that. The Alpha does not usually allow strangers inside his walls." Mahira's voice was hoarse from cold and disuse. "I am grateful. I will work for my shelter. I will not be a burden." Nasreen studied her for a long moment. "No pack mark," she observed, looking at Mahira's bare shoulder, where a pack symbol should have been branded or tattooed. The skin there was scarred, burned, deliberately destroyed. "You are rejected." It was not a question. Mahira nodded once. "I have no pack. I seek only shelter until the spring thaw. Then I will leave. I will cause no trouble." Nasreen's expression did not soften, but something flickered in her eyes. Understanding, perhaps, or pity. "In this fortress, Omega, you will work. You will scrub floors and carry water and prepare meals and stay silent. We do not ask questions about the past here. We do not pry into what wolves have lost. But there are rules." She stepped closer, her voice dropping lower. "You stay in the shadows. You do not speak unless spoken to. And you never, never touch the Alpha's son. The last girl who tried to get close to that boy was dragged out of here in pieces. Do you understand?" Mahira understood. She nodded, kept her face blank, gave nothing away. "I will stay invisible." "Good," Nasreen said. Then she turned and left, the door closing with a soft thud that somehow felt final. Alone in the small room, Mahira allowed herself one moment of weakness. She closed her eyes and let the memories wash over her. 10 years ago, she had been someone different. Mahira, daughter of Alpha Hamza Razaki, sister to Faraz, beloved of her mother Alina, a girl who had been learning to heal, studying herbs and poultices and the old ways under her grandmother's patient instruction. A girl who had believed the world was mostly good and that wolves protected each other and that her pack would stand forever. Then Zulfikar Khan had come. The Red Khan, the conqueror who crushed anyone who refused to bow. Her father had been proud, had refused to bend the knee to a king who ruled through slaughter, had believed that honor mattered more than survival. He had been wrong. Zulfikar's army had come in the night. They burned the Razaki territory to ash, slaughtered every wolf who resisted. Her father died defending the pack house. Her mother died trying to reach her children. And Faraz, her bright, laughing 14-year-old brother, had died 3 months later from a curse no one understood. Mahira had survived because her grandmother shoved her into a root cellar and told her to be silent. Be silent while the screaming happened above. Be silent while the smell of burning flesh filled the air. Be silent while her entire world ended. She had been 15 years old, and she had learned that silence was not peace. It was survival. It was the price you paid for living when everyone you loved was dead. For 10 years, she had wandered. No pack would take her. Rejected wolves were bad luck. Cursed, tainted by whatever failure had cost them their family. She had learned to live alone, to heal herself when injured, to steal when necessary, and trade when possible. She had learned that revenge was a cold fire that kept you warm when nothing else would. And she had learned about the scorpion curse, because she had spent 3 years hunting the ones who killed Faraz, learning their methods, understanding their magic, so that when she found them, she could make them pay. She had never expected to use that knowledge to save anyone, certainly not the son of the wolf who had destroyed everything she loved. But the moon goddess worked in strange ways, and Mahira had learned a long time ago that you did not question the path. You walked it, you survived it, and when the time came, you made the choices that let you sleep at night. Even if those choices made no sense. Even if they cost you everything. She opened her eyes, looked at the narrow window where snow still fell in thick sheets, and whispered a prayer to the moon goddess. Show me why you brought me here. Show me what you want from me. And if this is punishment for surviving when they did not, then let it be swift. No answer came. The moon goddess rarely spoke in words, but Mahira felt something shift inside her chest. A pull, a certainty. She was here for a reason, and soon, Very soon, she would understand what that reason was. The next morning, Mahira began her work. The Omegas showed her the kitchens, the corridors that needed scrubbing, the water that needed carrying from the deep wells beneath the fortress. The work was hard and endless and mind-numbing. Perfect. She kept her head down, spoke only when necessary, moved through the fortress like a shadow, invisible and unthreatening. But she noticed things. She had always been good at noticing. It was a healer's gift, the ability to see what others missed. The small details that revealed the truth beneath the surface. And in the Crimson Fortress, there were details everywhere. The way the servants moved with their shoulders hunched and their eyes lowered. The way guards stood too stiff at their posts, muscles coiled as if expecting violence at any moment. The way the entire fortress seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. Fear. That was what hung in the air. Not respect. Fear. And then she saw him. It was the third day. Mahira was carrying linens through a wide corridor when she noticed a small figure sitting on the cold stone floor near a window. A boy, no more than 8 or 9, with black hair and eyes that were too old for his face. He was arranging wooden figurines in careful patterns, his small hands precise and patient. He did not look up when she passed, did not acknowledge her presence at all. He was lost in his own world. But as she walked by, he did something that made her stop. His right hand drifted to his right ear, pressed gently, pulled away, and his face, just for a heartbeat, tightened with pain. Mahira's healer instincts flared. That was not normal. That was not the gesture of a child being childish. That was the gesture of someone in chronic pain, someone who had learned to hide it so well that no one noticed anymore. She forced herself to keep walking, forced herself not to stare, forced herself to remember Nasreen's warning. You never, never touch the Alpha's son. But her mind was racing. That boy was the heir, the cursed prince, the one everyone said the moon goddess had broken beyond repair, and he was in pain. Over the next several days, Mahira found excuses to work in corridors where Arman spent his time. She scrubbed floors near the courtyard where he built his stone towers. She carried water past the library where he sat reading books with pictures. She folded linens in hallways where he arranged his figurines. Always at a distance. Always invisible. Always careful not to draw attention. But she watched, and the more she watched, the more certain she became. Something was wrong. Not just the deafness. Something else. Something physical. The way he tilted his head to the right as if trying to relieve pressure. The way he pressed his hand to his ear more frequently when it was cold, or when the fortress was loud with activity. The way his small face would go pale sometimes, and he would sit very still, as if moving would make the pain worse. No one else noticed, or if they did, they had stopped caring. He was the cursed prince. Of course he was in pain. Of course he suffered. That was what curses did. That was the price of the moon goddess's wrath. But Mahira knew better, because she had seen this before. 10 years ago, in her brother Faraz. The way he had touched his ear, the way he had winced, the way the pain had grown slowly, steadily, until it consumed everything he was. On the evening of the autumn equinox, there was a feast in the great hall. All the pack wolves gathered to celebrate the turning of the season, to honor the moon goddess, to eat and drink and pretend for one night that they were not living in a fortress ruled by fear. Mahira worked in the kitchens, helping prepare platters of roasted meat and root vegetables and fresh bread that smelled like comfort she had not felt in a decade. When it was time to serve, she carried a heavy platter toward the great hall. The room was massive, all stone and timber and tapestries depicting battles Zulfikar had won. Torches blazed in iron sconces, casting dancing light across the faces of warriors and their families. At the far end, on a throne carved from black iron, sat the Alpha King himself. Zulfikar Khan, the Red Khan, the wolf who had destroyed her entire world. Mahira had imagined this moment for 10 years. What she would feel when she finally saw him again. Rage, she had thought. Hatred so pure it would burn through her chest. The need to shift and attack and make him pay for every life he had taken. But what she felt instead was something colder, emptier. He looked older than she remembered, harder. His face was all sharp angles and scars, his eyes the color of frozen amber, his presence so heavy it seemed to press down on everyone in the room. He did not smile, did not speak. Just sat on his throne and watched his pack with the expression of a wolf who had forgotten how to be anything other than a weapon. This was the wolf her father had refused to bow to. This was the wolf who had burned her home and killed her family. This was the wolf whose son she had been watching for days, whose heir was in pain that no one else could see. Mahira forced herself to look away, forced herself to keep moving. She was not here for revenge, not tonight. She was here to survive, to stay invisible, to make it through the winter and then disappear before anyone realized who she was. But then she saw Arman. He sat at a table with other pack children, but he was not part of their games or laughter. He was separate, isolated, alone even in a crowd. The other children ignored him. Their parents had taught them well. Do not touch the cursed prince. Do not speak to him. Do not let his bad luck infect you. Arman did not seem to care. He was used to it. He sat with his wooden figurines arranged in front of him, moving them slowly, creating patterns only he understood. And then, as Mahira passed his table, he looked up. Their eyes met. Just for a heartbeat. Just long enough for her to see the loneliness in his golden gaze. The same eyes his mother must have had. The same eyes that had watched his father walk past him 1,000 times without stopping. And then Arman did it again, touched his ear, winced. And this time, because the torchlight hit his face at the perfect angle, Mahira saw it. Deep inside his ear canal, barely visible, a glint of metal, dark, reddish, pulsing faintly with something that was not natural light. Mahira's blood turned to ice. Her hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the platter. She knew that shape, knew that glow, had seen it once before in the remains of the curse that killed her brother. A scorpion talisman, shadow coven magic, forbidden, deadly, designed to feed on a wolf's essence, to suppress their power, to kill them slowly from the inside. Someone had cursed the Alpha King's son, not the moon goddess, not fate. Someone with access, with intent, with enough hatred or ambition to place dark magic inside a child's ear and leave it there to destroy him piece by piece. Mahira forced herself to keep walking, forced her face to remain blank, forced her breathing to stay steady even though her heart was pounding like a war drum. She made it back to the kitchens, set down the platter, and then walked outside into the cold night air. She stood in the courtyard where Arman built his stone towers, looked up at the stars, and tried to process what she had just seen. This changed everything. The boy was not cursed by the moon goddess. He was cursed by someone in this fortress. someone close enough to have access to him as an infant, someone who wanted him weak, silent, unable to become the alpha he was meant to be. And that meant someone in the Crimson Fortress was a traitor. Someone who had been hiding in plain sight for 8 years. Someone who thought they had gotten away with it, because no one had ever looked closely enough to see the truth. Mahira's hands curled into fists. She should walk away, should pretend she had seen nothing, should let the Alpha King's son suffer the way her brother had suffered. It would be justice in a way. Let Zulfikar feel the helplessness of watching his child fade. Let him know what it was like to be powerless. But even as she thought it, she knew she could not do it. Because Arman was not Zulfikar. He was just a boy. A lonely, suffering child who had done nothing wrong except be born to a father who ruled through fear and a mother who died bringing him into the world. And Mahira knew how to break scorpion curses, had learned it hunting the ones who killed Faraz. Had sworn she would never let another child die that way if she could help it. She looked at the blood moon rising over the mountains. 3 days away. 3 days until the curse magic would be at its weakest. 3 days until she could try to save him. If she did this, there would be no going back. She would be risking execution, risking exposure, risking everything she had survived the last 10 years to build. But if she did not do this, Arman would die. Maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next month, but eventually, the same way Faraz did, slowly, painfully, alone. Mahira closed her eyes and made her choice. She would save him, she would break the curse, and she would face whatever consequences came after. Because something mattered more than revenge, something mattered more than survival. And saving a child, even the child of your enemy, was one of them. The moon goddess had led her here for a reason. And now, finally, Mahira understood what that reason was. The morning after the feast, Mahira woke before dawn with her decision settled like iron in her chest. 3 days until the blood moon. 3 days to prepare. 3 days to find a way to get close enough to Arman without raising suspicion. She dressed quickly in the rough wool dress all Omegas wore, tied her copper hair back in a tight braid, and went to the kitchens to begin her work. The other Omegas moved around her in practiced silence. No one spoke unless necessary. No one asked questions. In the hierarchy of the pack, Omegas were meant to be invisible, and these wolves had perfected the art. Mahira scrubbed pots and carried water and prepared bread dough with steady hands, but her mind was racing through everything her grandmother had taught her about breaking curses. Scorpion talismans were Shadow Coven specialty magic. They required blood sacrifice to create, dark moon rituals to activate, and once embedded in a victim, they fed on life force like parasites. The talisman in Arman's ear had been there for 8 years, growing stronger with each passing season, sinking deeper into his flesh, spreading its poison through his body. That was why he could not hear, why he could not shift, why his wolf remained dormant while every other pack child began showing their animal forms by age 5. The curse was killing him slowly, and no one had noticed, because they all believed the moon goddess had done it. They believed Zulfikar's brutality had brought divine punishment. So they stopped looking for physical causes. They stopped questioning. They accepted. But Mahira knew better. Her brother Faraz had suffered the same curse. She remembered the progression, first the hearing loss, then the inability to shift, then the constant pain that grew worse with each full moon, then the weakness, the fever, the way his body started shutting down piece by piece, until there was nothing left but a shell of the bright boy he had been. The traveling shaman who finally identified Faraz's curse had tried to remove it, but they had waited too long. The talisman had bonded too deeply. When the shaman pulled it free during a blood moon ritual, the dark magic shattered and released all its stored energy at once. Faraz's heart had stopped instantly. Mahira had held him while he died, his eyes wide and terrified, his hands forming signs she could not understand through her grief. After, the shaman had shown her the broken pieces. A tiny scorpion, delicate and deadly, made from shadow iron and cursed silver. The shaman had explained how it worked, how it was placed, how it could be removed if caught early enough. Mahira had memorized every word, driven by rage and the need to understand. She had spent 3 years hunting the Shadow Coven members who created it, learning their methods, studying their magic. She had learned that blood moon rituals weakened curse magic, that blessed silver tools could break the bond between talisman and flesh, that moon water collected at midnight could neutralize dark energy, that protection chants from the old ways could shield the person performing the extraction. She had learned all of it, planning revenge, never imagining she would use it to save someone. But here she was, in the fortress of her enemy, preparing to risk everything for a child who shared that enemy's blood. Mahira finished her morning work and moved to the corridors that needed cleaning. She made sure to choose areas where Arman spent his time: the library, the sunroom, the long hallway with windows overlooking the courtyard. She worked slowly, carefully, always keeping him in her peripheral vision. Arman arrived in the library mid-morning. He carried a leather satchel filled with his wooden figurines and settled into the window seat where morning light pooled on the stone. He arranged his warriors and wolves in careful patterns, his small hands moving with precision that spoke of endless practice. Other pack children ran past the library entrance, laughing and wrestling. But none of them stopped. None of them invited him to join. They had learned to treat him like furniture. Present, but irrelevant. Mahira scrubbed the floor near the shelves, close enough to watch, but far enough to seem unthreatening. She saw the moment Arman touched his ear again, saw the wince, saw the way he pressed harder, as if trying to relieve pressure that would not ease. The gesture was so automatic, he probably did not even realize he was doing it anymore. She waited until no one else was in the corridor, then stood slowly and walked toward the window seat. Arman looked up, his golden eyes wary. Omegas did not approach him. No one approached him unless ordered to by his tutors or his father. Mahira could see the confusion in his face, the uncertainty. Was she going to hurt him, mock him, tell him to leave? Instead, she reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out something small wrapped in cloth. She set it on the window seat beside him, met his eyes, and placed her hand over her heart. The gesture his mother might have made. Safe. You are safe with me. Then she walked away before anyone could see. Arman stared at the small bundle for a long moment. Slowly, carefully, he unwrapped it. Inside were herbs wrapped in clean linen, chamomile for pain, lavender for calm, willow bark for inflammation, and a tiny carved wolf, no bigger than his thumb, made from smooth river stone. He looked up, searching for the Omega who had left it. But she was gone, disappeared back into the shadows where her kind belonged. Arman held the carved wolf in his palm, felt its weight, its smoothness, and something tight in his chest loosened just slightly. Someone had seen him. Someone had noticed he was in pain. Someone cared enough to help. He tucked the wolf into his pocket and held it there like a talisman of his own. A good one, a kind one. Over the next 2 days, Mahira left more small gifts where Arman would find them. Smooth stones that fit perfectly in his hand. dried flowers that smelled of summer, strips of soft leather he could braid when his hands needed something to do, and always the herbs for pain. She never stayed long enough for him to thank her, never drew attention to what she was doing, but she knew he found them because they disappeared, and because she started seeing him carry the carved wolf everywhere. On the second day, Armand left something for her, a drawing on parchment, tucked into the windowsill where she always cleaned. It showed two wolves, one large with a fierce expression, standing alone on a mountain, one small with sad eyes, sitting in a valley below, and between them a great distance marked with dark scribbles that might have been walls or might have been something worse. Mahira understood. He was showing her his world, showing her what it felt like to be the cursed son of a king who could not look at him. She carefully folded the drawing and put it in her pocket, and the next morning she left her own drawing in the same spot. Two wolves closer together, the small one no longer alone. A moon overhead, full and bright. Armand found it and pressed it to his chest, and when Mahira saw that gesture from across the corridor, she had to turn away before the tears came. This child was so desperate for connection, for proof that someone saw him as more than a curse, that even the smallest kindness felt like salvation. That afternoon, Mahira was scrubbing the floor near the courtyard entrance when Armand came out to build his stone towers. He saw her, hesitated, then carefully sat down where she could see him. He started stacking stones, but every few moments he would glance her way, checking if she was still there, if she was watching. Mahira kept working, but she nodded each time he looked. "I see you. I am here. You are not alone." Armand's shoulders relaxed. He built his tower taller than usual, and when it finally fell, he did not look sad. He looked at Mahira and smiled, small and uncertain, but real. The first smile she had seen from him. Other Omegas noticed. Nasreen cornered Mahira in the kitchens that evening, her expression dark with warning. "I told you not to get close to the boy. You think you are being kind, but you are playing with fire. The Alpha finds out you have been leaving things for his son, and he will have you executed for witchcraft or for trying to manipulate the heir. Is that what you want? To be dragged into the courtyard and torn apart?" Mahira kept her voice steady. "I am not manipulating anyone. The boy is lonely. I left him herbs for pain. That is all." "That is all?" Nasreen's voice rose. "That is how it starts. You think you are helping, but the last Omega who tried to get close to that child ended up missing. No one knows what happened to her, but we all know she crossed a line. The Alpha does not tolerate anyone interfering with his son, not healers, not tutors, not well-meaning Omegas who think they know better." Mahira met her eyes. "Then I will be careful." Nasreen stared at her, then shook her head. "You are a fool who will get herself killed. Do not come crying to me when the guards drag you away." She left, and Mahira stood alone in the kitchen, her hands shaking. Nasreen was right. She was being a fool. But she could not stop now. Not when she had seen what was inside Armand's ear. Not when she knew she could save him. Not when the blood moon was rising tomorrow and time was running out. That night, Mahira prepared everything she would need. She had stolen a pair of fine tweezers from the healer's quarters, blessing them with moon water she collected from the courtyard fountain at midnight. She had gathered white sage from the fortress gardens, dried it in her room, bound it with thread stolen from the sewing supplies. She had sharpened a small iron knife on stone until it could cut shadow, and she had memorized the protection chants her grandmother taught her when she was young. "Moon Mother, see this child. Break what binds him. Restore what was stolen. Let shadow flee from silver light. She whispered the words over and over until they became part of her breathing, part of her heartbeat. Tomorrow night, when the blood moon rose, she would have one chance. One moment when curse magic weakened. One opportunity to save Armand before the talisman killed him the way it had killed Faraz. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, and wondered if she would survive what was coming. The extraction might fail. Armand might die. Zulfikar might have her executed. She might reveal her identity and bring the full weight of his wrath down on herself. Any of those things could happen. Probably would happen. But she would try anyway, because 10 years ago, she had hidden in a root cellar while everyone she loved was slaughtered, and she had spent every day since then wondering if there was something more she could have done. She would not make that mistake again. Not for this child. Not when she finally had the knowledge and the courage to act. The moon goddess had brought her here for this moment. Mahira could feel it in her bones. And whatever happened tomorrow, she would face it knowing she had chosen to help instead of hurt. Had chosen healing instead of revenge. Had chosen to be something better than the wolves who had destroyed her family. She closed her eyes and prayed for strength, for steady hands, for a miracle. And outside her window, the moon rose fat and red, preparing for the ritual that would change everything. The blood moon rose on the third night, like a wound in the sky. Mahira watched it crest the mountains from her small window, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. This was it, the moment she had been preparing for, the moment that would either save Armand or destroy them both. The fortress was restless. Blood moons made wolves edgy, aggressive, their animals rising close to the surface. Fights broke out in the training yards. Warriors prowled the corridors with eyes that flashed between human and wolf. Even the Omegas moved more carefully, aware that on nights like this, dominance displays could turn violent without warning. Zulfikar had taken his senior warriors on a border patrol. Reports of rogues in the howling waste, someone said. The Alpha King never stayed in the fortress during blood moons. Too many wolves packed too close, their instincts screaming at them to challenge, to fight, to prove their strength. Better to ride out into the frozen waste and hunt something that deserved killing. Mahira had counted on that, had prayed for it. With Zulfikar gone, security would be lighter, the fortress would be quieter, she would have space to work without the Alpha's presence, bearing down on everything like a storm waiting to break. She gathered her tools and hid them in the deep pockets of her dress. Blessed silver tweezers wrapped in cloth, white sage bound with thread, iron knife strapped to her thigh under her skirt, a small vial of moon water. Everything she needed to break a curse that should have been broken years ago. The courtyards were empty as she moved through them. Most wolves had retreated to their quarters, trying to keep their animals under control. Mahira crossed the open space where Armand built his stone towers and headed toward the wing where the royal family lived. She had watched the patrol patterns, knew which corridors the guards avoided, knew where the shadows were deepest. She was halfway there when she heard it, a sound that made her blood freeze. A muffled cry, barely audible, coming from the direction of the eastern courtyard. She changed direction, running now, her healer's instincts screaming that something was wrong. She found Armand on the ground near the old well, his small body curled into a ball, both hands pressed against his right ear. His mouth was open in a silent scream, tears streaming down his face, his whole body shaking. The blood moon's light painted him in shades of red and black, and Mahira could see dark energy radiating from his ear like smoke. The talisman was reacting to the blood moon. Curse magic always surged during celestial events, fighting against the weakening influence. It was trying to kill him before it could be removed. Mahira dropped to her knees beside him, her hands shaking. She pulled his hands away from his ear, tilted his head so she could see. The talisman was visible now, glowing with sickly red light, pulsing in rhythm with Armand's racing heartbeat. She could see its shape clearly. A scorpion, delicate and deadly, its tail curved into his ear canal, its body anchored deep. Armand's eyes found hers, wide with pain and terror. He tried to sign something, but his hands were trembling too badly. Mahira cupped his face, made him look at her. "I am here. I can fix this. I can make the pain stop. But you have to trust me." She did not know if he understood, could not know if he read her lips or saw the determination in her eyes. But slowly, desperately, he nodded. Mahira looked around. The courtyard was empty, but it was too exposed. If guards came by, if anyone saw what she was about to do, they would stop her, execute her, and Armand would die anyway. She made a decision born of desperation. She lifted him, shocked by how light he was, and carried him across the courtyard toward the Omega quarters, the one place in the fortress where highborn wolves never went, where she could work in secret. Armand did not fight, just pressed his face against her shoulder, his small body convulsing with pain he could not voice. Mahira moved through shadows, praying to the moon goddess to keep them hidden, to give her just a few more minutes. Just enough time. She reached her small room and kicked the door shut behind her. Laid Armand on her narrow cot, positioning his head toward the window where blood moonlight streamed through. She pulled out her tools with shaking hands, arranged them on the floor, and began the ritual her grandmother had taught her. First, the white sage. She lit it with flint and steel, let the smoke fill the room, cleansing the space of hostile energy. Then the moon water. She dipped her fingers in it, drew symbols on Armand's forehead and cheeks. Ancient marks of protection. Finally the chant, whispered low and urgent while the blood moon watched. Moon Mother, see this child. Break what binds him. Restore what was stolen. Let shadow flee from silver light. Armand's eyes were locked on her face. She could see fear there, but also something else. Trust. He trusted her. This child, who had been hurt by every healer who tried to help him, who had learned that medicine meant pain and examinations meant failure, trusted her. Mahira's hands steadied. She picked up the blessed silver tweezers, dipped them in moon water. They hissed and steamed, the sacred water activating the blessing. She leaned close to Armand, her voice soft. "This will hurt. I am sorry, but it will only hurt for a moment, and then everything will change. Be brave, little wolf. Be brave for me." She tilted his head, looked deep into his ear canal. The scorpion talisman pulsed with dark energy, fighting her before she even touched it. Shadow Coven magic did not want to be removed. It would resist. It would fight. It would try to hurt him worse, just to stay embedded. Mahira whispered the protection chant again, then slowly inserted the tweezers into Armand's ear. He went rigid, his mouth opening in a silent scream. She could feel the resistance, like trying to pull a fishhook from deep flesh. The talisman had grown roots, dark tendrils of magic that had woven through tissue and bone. She hooked the scorpion's tail, pulled gently. Nothing, pulled harder. Armand's hands clawed at the cot, his body arching. Tears streamed down Mahira's face. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. Just a little more." She adjusted her grip, whispered to the moon goddess for strength, and pulled with everything she had. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then resistance gave way. The talisman came free with a wet, tearing sound, landing in her palm. It screamed, a sound only she and Armand could hear, high-pitched and inhuman, full of rage at being removed. Black smoke poured from it, swirling around them like living shadow. The curse was trying to reclaim its host, to burrow back into Armand's flesh. Mahira dropped it on the iron knife. The blessed metal neutralized the dark energy instantly. The scorpion dissolved into black ash, the smoke dissipating like nightmares at dawn. For 3 heartbeats, silence. Complete, total silence. Then Armand gasped, loud, audible, real. His eyes flew open wider than seemed possible. He could hear his own breathing, could hear Mahira's heart pounding, could hear wind against stone, fire crackling somewhere in the fortress, guards calling to each other in distant corridors. Sound flooded his world all at once after 8 years of nothing. He started crying, real crying with sound. Sobs that were loud and messy and beautiful. His whole body shook with the force of them. Mahira gathered him close, holding him while he wept, while his mind tried to process that the silence was gone, that the prison he had lived in his whole life had just shattered. But something else was happening. Mahira felt it before she saw it. Power surging through Armand's small body. His wolf, dormant for 8 years, suppressed by the curse, was waking up. His eyes flashed silver gold. Fur rippled under his skin. Claws extended from his fingertips. Bones began to shift. He was about to have his first shift, and he had no idea what was happening. Mahira held him tighter. "It is all right. Your wolf is coming. Let it happen. Do not fight. You are safe." Armand's body convulsed. The shift for first-timers was always painful, always chaotic. But this was different. This was 8 years of suppressed animal instinct trying to emerge all at once. His spine curved, his face elongated, his hands and feet restructured themselves. And then, in a burst of silver light, a wolf pup appeared where the boy had been. He was small, barely larger than a fox, but his fur was pure silver. Not grey, not white, true silver that glowed faintly in the moonlight. His eyes were still golden, still Armand's eyes, but now they held the ancient wisdom of wolf instinct. He looked at Mahira, and something passed between them. A bond deeper than words, deeper than pack law. A bond of salvation and gratitude and recognition. The pup's mouth opened. Through the connection all shifted wolves shared, his voice came, not spoken aloud, but heard in the mind. The gift of silver wolves, rare and precious and thought to be extinct. Ami. The word was clear and certain. You are my Ami. Mahira's tears fell freely. Yes, little wolf, I have got you. You are safe now. The pup pressed against her, and Mahira held him, this impossible silver child who should have been dead, who should have been broken forever, who was instead whole and strong and more powerful than anyone had guessed. But their moment of peace lasted only seconds. Heavy footsteps pounded through the corridor outside, shouting, the sound of guards mobilizing, and then a roar that shook the foundations of the fortress. Zulfikar had returned. The door exploded inward. The Alpha King filled the doorway, still half-shifted, his eyes blazing red with protective fury. His massive form radiated violence barely contained. Behind him, guards poured into the corridor, weapons drawn. Zulfikar's gaze took in the scene. his son as a silver wolf pup, an omega covered in black residue and blood, the remains of dark magic on an iron knife, the smell of curse-breaking rituals. His mind could not process it fast enough, so his wolf took over. "What have you done to my son?" His voice was not human. It was something between man and beast, all rage and terror and the primal need to protect. He lunged forward, claws extended, ready to tear Mahira apart. But Arman moved faster. The silver pup threw himself between Mahira and his father, his small body planted firm, his lips pulled back to show puppy teeth that should not have been threatening, but somehow were. And then he howled. His first true howl, high and pure and powerful enough to make Zulfikar freeze mid-lunge. The sound echoed through the fortress like a bell. Every wolf in the building felt it, a silver wolf's howl, a sound they thought they would never hear again, a sound that carried power older than pack law, older than alpha dominance, older than anything they understood. Zulfikar stumbled back, his wolf retreating in confusion. His son was howling, his son who had never made a sound, who had been silent since birth, was howling with power that made the stones tremble. Arman shifted back to human, naked and small, but no longer silent. "Father, stop." His voice cracked, unpracticed, but real. "She saved me." She pulled out the darkness. "She saved me." Zulfikar shifted back to human form, staring. "Your voice. I can hear your voice. You can speak." Arman nodded, tears streaming. "I can hear everything. The wind. Your heart. Your voice." She pulled out the curse. It was in my ear. A scorpion made of shadow. It was killing me, and she saved me. Zulfikar looked at Mahira. She stood slowly, facing him even though every instinct screamed at her to run. She had just touched the Alpha's heir without permission, had performed forbidden magic, had revealed that his son was never cursed by the moon goddess, but by someone with access and intent and malice. "Who are you?" Zulfikar's voice was raw. "What did you do?" Before Mahira could answer, guards grabbed her arms, wrenching them behind her back. One of them produced iron chains, snapping them around her wrists. Arman screamed, "No, let her go. She helped me." But Zulfikar raised his hand. "Take her to the Grand Hall. Call everyone. We will have answers." They dragged Mahira away. She did not fight. There was no point. She had known this would happen. Had accepted the cost when she decided to act. She looked back once, met Arman's terrified gaze, and tried to smile. "It is all right. You are going to be all right." Arman tried to run after her, but Zulfikar caught him, held him back even as the boy struggled and screamed words his father was hearing for the first time. The Grand Hall filled quickly. Word had spread through the fortress like wildfire. The cursed prince was howling. The cursed prince could speak. An Omega had done something impossible. Every wolf who could walk crowded into the massive stone room, desperate to see what was happening. Mahira stood in the center, hands chained, surrounded by hostile wolves. Their eyes gleamed in the torchlight. Their lips curled back from teeth that were too sharp to be human. She could feel their pack bond, their collective rage at an outsider who had dared touch their heir. It did not matter that she had saved him. She had broken pack law, touched the Alpha's son without permission, used magic without authority. Zulfikar entered with Arman, clinging to his side. The boy refused to leave his father, his small hand gripping Zulfikar's tunic like a lifeline. The Alpha King climbed the steps to his throne, and the grand hall fell silent. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner. This Omega stands accused of using forbidden magic on my son. The penalty is death. Does anyone speak against this judgment? Arman pulled away from his father, ran to the center of the hall, placed himself in front of Mahira. I speak against it. She saved my life. There was a scorpion in my ear. Cursed magic. She pulled it out. She made it so I can hear and shift and speak. She gave me everything you have been trying to give me for 8 years. The crowd murmured. Zulfikar's face was unreadable. Arman, come here. No, not until you promise you will not hurt her. I cannot promise that until I understand what happened. Then I will tell you. Arman's voice grew stronger. For 8 years, I was in pain. Every day. My ear hurt all the time, and no one noticed, no one except her. She saw me touch my ear. She saw me wince, and she recognized what was wrong because her brother died from the same curse. The grand hall erupted in whispers. Mahira closed her eyes. Arman did not know what he was revealing, did not know that telling this story would expose her identity. She knew about the curse because someone used it to kill her family. Arman continued. She learned to break it so she could get revenge on the wolves who did it. But instead of using that knowledge to hurt us, she used it to save me, even though she had every reason to let me die. Zulfikar's voice cut through the noise. What do you mean, every reason? Arman looked at Mahira, and she saw the moment he understood what he had done. I am sorry, he signed with his hands. I did not mean to tell. Mahira shook her head. It is all right, little wolf. They would find out anyway. She turned to face Zulfikar, lifted her chin, and spoke clearly. My name is Mahira, daughter of Alpha Hamza Razaki. 10 years ago you destroyed my pack because my father refused to submit. You killed him. You killed my mother. You burned our territory to ash. I survived because my grandmother hid me in a root cellar while you slaughtered everyone I loved. The silence in the grand hall was absolute. Every wolf present knew the story. The Razaki pack had been made an example of. Total annihilation, no survivors. That was what everyone believed. Zulfikar's face drained of color. The Razaki pack. Your father refused to bend the knee. I gave no quarter. No, you did not. Mahira's voice did not waver. My brother Faraz was 14. He did not die in the massacre. He died 3 months later from a scorpion curse placed by your enemies, by wolves who wanted to weaken your rivals before you destroyed them. I watched him die. I learned to break the curse, hunting the Shadow Coven members who created it. I spent 10 years learning, surviving, carrying hatred for you in my heart. Then why save my son? Zulfikar's voice broke. Why not let him die? It would have been justice. Payment for what I took from you. Because he is a child, Mahira said simply. Because revenge is cold and I am tired of being cold. Because I could not watch another innocent boy die from that curse when I had the power to stop it. Because your son is not you, and he deserves to hear the world, regardless of what his father did. Arman moved to Mahira's side, wrapped his arms around her waist. She is mine now. My Ami, you cannot hurt her. But someone in the crowd could not stay silent. The royal healer, Hakim, pushed forward. Alpha, she admits to using forbidden magic, to being the daughter of a rebel pack. She could be lying about the curse. She could have placed it herself just to remove it and gain your favor. Arman spun to face him, and his eyes flashed silver. You are lying. I can feel it. My wolf knows lies from truth now. You are scared because you knew about the curse, did you not? You saw it and hid it. Hakim's face went white. That is absurd. I would never— You are lying, Arman repeated, his voice ringing with certainty. Father, he is lying. I can sense his fear, his guilt. He knew. Zulfikar rose from his throne slowly. Healer, did you know my son was cursed? No, Alpha. I swear. Tell the truth, Arman commanded, and power rippled through his words. Silver wolf gift, the ability to compel truth, a gift inherited from his mother's bloodline, awakened by the curse breaking. Tell the truth now. The compulsion hit Hakim like a physical force. He tried to resist, but 8-year-old Arman was already stronger than he should be. The words tore from Hakim's throat against his will. Yes, I knew. 6 years ago, I saw the talisman during an examination. I was paid to hide it, paid to tell you there was nothing we could do, paid to keep your son weak. The grand hall erupted. Wolves surged forward, howling for blood. Zulfikar's roar silenced them. By who? Who paid you? Hakim fell to his knees. By your beta, by Rashid. The name hung in the air like poison. Rashid, Zulfikar's right hand for over a decade, his most trusted warrior, his advisor and friend. Guards immediately moved to surround Rashid where he stood near the throne. He did not try to run, just smiled coldly. These are lies from a desperate healer trying to save his own life, Rashid said calmly, and from a rejected Omega who probably cursed the boy herself. Arman pointed at him. Liar. You are lying too. I can feel it. You did this. You cursed me. You wanted me dead. Why would I curse you? Rashid's voice was smooth, reasonable. I have served your father faithfully. Because an alpha without a strong heir can be challenged, Mahira said quietly. Because if Arman died, or could never shift, someone could claim the throne under ancient law. Someone close enough, trusted enough, someone who had been waiting 8 years for the right moment. Rashid's mask cracked, his eyes flashed yellow. Enough of this. That Omega whore is manipulating all of you. The boy is not even truly healed. He is probably going to die anyway from whatever dark magic she used. He lunged, not toward Arman, but toward Mahira, claws extended, intending to kill her before she could say more. But he never reached her. Zulfikar intercepted. The two wolves collided in mid-air, massive and brutal. They hit the ground in a tangle of fur and fangs, both fully shifted now. Black wolf against brown. Alpha against beta. The fight was savage, primal, echoing through the grand hall while everyone watched in horror. Rashid was strong, but Zulfikar was stronger, fueled by rage and betrayal and 8 years of helplessness that finally had a target. He pinned Rashid by the throat, his jaws locked around the beta's windpipe. One bite, and it would be over. But he did not bite. Instead, he shifted back to human, keeping Rashid pinned with his weight. Why? His voice was destroyed. Why did you do this to my son? Rashid shifted back, blood on his lips, defeat in his eyes. Because I have waited long enough. 8 years watching you rule through fear, watching you destroy everything you touch. I would have been a better king. The pack would have thrived under me. But you would not die, would not step down. So I made sure your heir would die instead. Slowly, painfully. And when he finally failed to shift at his 10th year, I would have challenged you under sacred law. No heir means no dynasty. The throne would have been mine. Zulfikar's hands shook. You cursed my son. You let him suffer for 8 years. You stole his hearing, his wolf, his voice. You let me search the world for answers you had all along. Yes, Rashid hissed, and I would do it again, because you do not deserve that boy. You do not deserve anything good. You are a butcher who has forgotten how to be a wolf. Zulfikar looked at his son. Arman stood with Mahira, his small hand in hers, watching his father with those golden eyes that saw too much. The Alpha King made a choice. He let Rashid go, stood, and addressed the pack. Rashid, you are exiled. Beyond the howling waste where rogues hunt, you will be marked as traitor and oathbreaker. If you return, death will be swift. Guards, take him. They dragged Rashid away, still spitting curses. The grand hall slowly emptied as wolves returned to their quarters, whispering about silver wolves and betrayal and the Omega who saved them all. Zulfikar approached Mahira. She stood straight, chin lifted, waiting for judgment. He stopped in front of her, this massive king who had destroyed her world, and slowly knelt. The chains on her wrists dissolved, his alpha command releasing them. You gave me back my son, he said quietly. You gave him his hearing, his wolf, his voice. You risked execution to save the child of your enemy. Name your reward. Anything within my power. Mahira looked at Arman, then back at Zulfikar. I want nothing from you, so Alpha, I am only grateful he is whole. You are no common Omega. Zulfikar's gaze was piercing. Your knowledge, your courage, the way you move, you were trained to lead. Who are you truly? I already told you. I am Mahira Razaki, last survivor of the pack you destroyed. Zulfikar closed his eyes. The Razaki pack. I remember. Your father refused submission. I showed no mercy. Your brother, Faraz. He was young. 14, Mahira whispered. He died from a curse like the one in your son's ear. I learned to break it so I could hunt those who killed him. I never imagined I would use that knowledge to save you anything. But I could not let Arman suffer. He is just a child. Why did you come here? To my fortress? Mahira's voice was steady. To survive the winter, maybe to find justice. But when I saw your son in pain, saw the curse no one else noticed, I could not walk away. Even though everything in me wanted revenge, I chose to heal instead. Arman pulled away from Mahira and ran to his father. Mahira stays. She is my family now. Zulfikar looked at his son, hearing his voice clearly for the first time in 8 years. Your wolf is silver, like your mother's. You have her gifts. I can hear lies, Arman confirmed. I can speak through the bond. I can protect those I love. And Mahira is mine to protect now. Zulfikar turned back to Mahira. I cannot undo what I did, cannot bring back your family, but I offer this, the title of Pack Mother, blood bond with my son, protection of this pack for life. You saved my heir when everyone else gave up. You showed mercy I never deserved. Let me try to earn it. Mahira met his eyes. I will stay for him, not for you. To make sure he grows strong and kind and nothing like you were. And maybe, Alpha King, it is time you learned that strength is not only in the kill, sometimes it is in the choice not to make it. Zulfikar bowed his head. Then teach me, Omega. Teach me what my brutality made me forget. Weeks passed. Arman trained with his silver wolf abilities, Mahira always at his side. His hearing sharpened until he could detect lies in a heartbeat. His strength grew beyond his years. His voice, once silent, became clear and commanding. The pack watched in awe as the cursed prince transformed into something magnificent. Zulfikar changed too, slowly, painfully, learning to be a father instead of just a king, learning to listen instead of command, learning that the Omega, who had every reason to hate him, was teaching him more about leadership than a decade of conquest ever had. One night, Mahira stood in the courtyard where Aman built his stone towers, now rebuilt and taller than before. The blood moon had faded to silver. The winter air was cold but clean. Aman slept peacefully in his room, his first true rest in 8 years. "Moon goddess," Mahira whispered to the sky, "you sent me to my enemy's door for a reason. Maybe redemption is not revenge. Maybe it is teaching wolves to be better than their worst moments. Maybe it is showing that the rejected can become the chosen, and that curses can be broken by those brave enough to try." A white wolf appeared at the tree line, massive, glowing faintly, eyes like starlight, the moon goddess's messenger. It regarded her for a long moment, then bowed its great head in approval before fading like mist. Mahira understood. This had always been the plan. To break curses not just of dark magic, but of hatred and fear and cycles of violence that destroyed packs from within. She had been forged in grief and loss and rage, but she had chosen healing. And that choice had saved more than just one boy. It had saved them all. Aman appeared beside her, his silver wolf form padding silently across the stone. Through their bond, his voice was warm. "Thank you, Ammi, for everything." Mahira knelt and held him. "You were always worth saving, little wolf. Always." He howled then, clear and strong and full of life. The sound carried across the fortress, across the mountains, across the territories beyond. A silver wolf's song, a promise that mercy was stronger than conquest, that healing was braver than revenge, and that sometimes the moon goddess wrote the greatest destinies through the most rejected wolves. And in the shadows of the grand hall, Zulfikar heard his son's howl and wept for the first time since Zainab died. Because that sound was hope. That sound was redemption. That sound was proof that even a butcher could learn to build instead of destroy, if someone brave enough was willing to show him how.